The Acali experiment was a highly misguided experiment conducted by an incompetent scientist. However, when viewed not as an experiment, but as a narrative, it contains a very compelling story. Santiago Genove was an anthropologist obsessed with studying violent behavior in humans. In the 1970s, inspired by an experiment conducted on monkeys, he proposed the sex raft experiment. The experiment that inspired him had revealed that violence in monkeys was largely driven by the need to mate with females. Santiago wanted to test this hypothesis on humans. Santiago's expectation regarding the experiment was this: if I can find the source of violence in humans, I can also uncover the secret to world peace. Now, I need to pause here briefly and say a few things about Santiago. While watching this video, you will think that this man's decisions and ideas are strange and stupid. And you will be completely right in thinking so. Santiago was a terrible scientist, and you will clearly see this in every stage of his so-called experiment. Anyway, in the 1970s, Santiago designed an experiment he called Acali. According to this experiment, 10 people would drift on a raft from Spain to Mexico across the Atlantic Ocean for exactly 101 days. The raft, approximately 12 meters long, was quite large. Space constraints would not be a major issue, and all food would be prepared in advance. Still, it was a very dangerous journey, but that was the point. According to Santiago, people revert to their instincts in dangerous situations. He found 6 women and 4 men. They all came from different cultures and countries. He wanted this kind of diversity for 2 reasons: to create sexual competition and to build a small world on the raft. Santiago did not choose the people randomly. He wanted sexual tension between them. That's why they were all in their early 20s to mid-30s and frankly, looked quite sexy. Santiago also included a very handsome priest in the group, just in case. In addition, in the 1970s, women had begun to take on more powerful roles in society. Santiago also chose women for important tasks related to the raft. The captain, the person who would perform maintenance and repairs on the raft, and the radio operator were all women. This was perhaps the only commendable approach in Santiago's experiment. But as you will see later, his commitment to the idea of strong women was quite weak. Santiago had now prepared his experiment and selected his subjects. The Acali expedition began on the morning of May 12, 1973. According to Santiago, this experiment consisted of him sitting in a corner, taking notes in his diary, and watching the people on the raft inevitably descend into violence and chaos. Before proceeding with the experiment, let me share with you the following statement from the contract that the 10 participants had to sign, which demonstrates how absurd and unscientific this experiment was. We agree to surrender our souls, bodies, and minds to Santiago. Santiago distributed questionnaires to the subjects every week. These questionnaires contained questions such as, what do you think about the other people you are here with? Who would you like to eliminate from the group? Who do you like the most? Who would you like to sleep with? What would drive you to violence? What would cause others to turn to violence? Strange and a little disturbing, yes. But all of these surveys were answered privately and shared only with Santiago. So everything was supposedly done in the name of science. In fact, it was obvious what Santiago expected from this experiment. He wanted those traveling together to eventually turn on each other, for the aggressors to get carried away and descend into violent chaos. And he hoped to witness this with his own eyes. But as the weeks passed, no behavior emerged to support this claim. On the contrary, the group had become almost like friends. They were having a great time on the boats. Footage from the experiment showed people laughing, joking, and playing games together. Another of Santiago's expectations was that people would have sex with each other. He thought this would create jealousy and conflict, ultimately leading to violence. And finally, Santiago's wish came true. Relationships began between some people. A few men and women got together, but there was no emotional bond or passion behind it. People were just together out of boredom. So these relationships did not cause any conflict whatsoever. As a result, the experiment was progressing in the exact opposite direction of what Santiago wanted. As the group grew closer, Santiago's surveys became increasingly disturbing. How many times have you masturbated? Who have you had sex with? Who would you like to have sex with? Who would you like to kill? In response to these strange questions and Santiago's growing dissatisfaction, the group began to question Santiago. The most common answer to the question, "Who do you like the least?" in a survey was Santiago himself. One morning, a few people from the group were fishing and one of them caught a small shark. They pulled the animal onto the deck and the group was understandably excited. According to Santiago's diary entries about this moment, he interpreted it as the violence finally beginning. He wrote in his diary, "They hit the shark on the head with an axe and cut up its meat." But the video footage only showed people cutting up the fish and preparing dinner. There was no sign of violence whatsoever. And no matter how disappointed Santiago was, the good atmosphere among the group continued. People were just hanging out, spending time together, and accumulating more and more anger towards Santiago with each passing day. The truth was that the subjects' friendship was growing stronger every day. After all, they had to live together, and this made them more open and sincere. What emerged was actually a very genuine and beautiful bond. One participant said that Sal was an escape from a violent relationship for him. He described how the people in the group supported him during this process. Another participant had a very meaningful moment. He was black and, while crossing the Atlantic, realized that his ancestors had most likely made the same journey as slaves. This realization showed him that he needed to appreciate the opportunities he had today even more. While all this was happening, Santiago sat in a corner, hoping people would kill each other. One day, Sal's steering system broke down. Remember, Santiago had given the most important tasks on Sal to the women. One of these women was Wayne Zanotti. She was trained, willing, and competent to dive and intervene with the steering. But Santiago wouldn't let her. He said she couldn't do it because she was a woman. This response was truly bizarre, because the reason he hired Wayne as a diver was precisely because she was a woman. Wayne was naturally angry, but backed down. Santiago took her diving equipment and entered the water. Of course, this equipment was not suitable for him, and he didn't even know how to use it. Naturally, this attempt ended in complete failure. Santiago nearly drowned, and the Sal was still damaged. That night, after Santiago fell asleep, Wayne secretly entered the water and repaired the rudder herself. The next morning, Santiago found out and went berserk. This incident was the last straw. After this, Santiago began to openly manipulate the experiment. He organized a meeting and gathered everyone. He told them they were being too friendly. He scolded them for not taking the experiment seriously. Then he began reading aloud the answers people had given to specific questions. For example, he told one person that someone else wanted to kill them, and another that someone wanted to have sex with them. It was a disgusting and bizarre method of trying to turn people against each other. At one point, he called the only black woman in the room primitive and argued that she should be with the black man in the room because it was natural. Of course, all this only made people hate Santiago even more. There was already a strong bond of friendship among the group, and Santiago's efforts were not enough to shake that. Around this time, some major newspapers learned about the experiment and unofficially referred to the project as Sex Tuesday. The newspapers reported almost exclusively on the sexual encounters in the room. Santiago glanced at these reports at the university where he worked. These scandalous reports were terrible for the university's image. As a result, the university severed all ties with Santiago and completely cut off its connection to the experiment. Santiago, now fed up with his job, was completely demoralized. But as you know, bad things have a habit of coming one after another. Shortly thereafter, a tropical storm appeared in the path of the raft, drifting towards the Caribbean. At the beginning of the journey, Santiago had chosen Maria, a Swedish woman, as captain. Her job was to guide the team in difficult times and keep the raft on course. Maria decided that the most sensible decision for the approaching storm was to take shelter on a nearby Caribbean island. Santiago objected. He said contact with civilization would ruin the nature of the experiment. But Maria refused to risk these people's lives for the sake of Santiago's failed experiment. Upon this, Santiago took command from Maria. He told everyone to go to the cabin, lock their doors, and wait for the storm to pass. Fortunately, the storm had changed direction and was weathered with only a little rain and wind. But now Santiago was officially the captain of the raft. After this incident, everyone in the group came to hate Santiago. They even seriously considered killing him. They discussed how they could do it, how they could make it look like an accident. But then they gave up on the idea. One morning, they noticed his huge ship heading straight for the raft. If the ship's course didn't change, the raft would be crushed and they would all die. The new captain, Santiago, was completely panicked. Not knowing what to do, he ran around the raft like a madman. Meanwhile, the former captain, Maria, remained calm. She told everyone what to do. Flares were fired, signals were given, and the raft's whistle was blown. At the last moment, the cargo ship changed course and passed the raft. From that moment on, Maria was reinstated as captain, as she deserved. After this incident, Santiago withdrew from the experiment. He no longer distributed antipers, took notes, or held meetings. He withdrew to his corner and shut himself off silently. After a while, he fell ill and spent his days in front of the camera, having his subjects watch him. One of the participants was a health worker, and according to the group's consensus, Santiago was probably pretending to be sick to attract attention. But this situation suited the group. With Santiago out of the picture, the atmosphere on the raft became more peaceful than ever. The group could now freely enjoy themselves and have a good time. There was no longer a strange man lurking in the corner, watching them. Participants said that after Santiago withdrew from the journey, the group formed a much stronger bond. Relationships that initially consisted of strangers in the same room gradually turned into real and deep friendships. At the end of the 101 days, the room reached its destination, and everyone had become almost like each other's closest friend. Santiago's obsession with violence and the safe never became a reality. On the contrary, people grew closer to each other. They became a group of friends who cared for each other's wounds and always supported one another. I told this story because it simply illustrates the triumph of good over evil. I don't think Santiago really embarked on this venture out of scientific curiosity. In my opinion, he was just a foolish man who succumbed to a god complex. What he did had little to do with science. Despite his obvious attempts to pit people against each other through his manipulations, the violence Santiago desired never materialized. Instead, he created a group of people who, whether they wanted to or not, formed lifelong friendships. I make these videos all by myself. To support me for free, all you need to do is subscribe. Stay tuned.